Thank you, Roel. And again, I'm very grateful to be here. I've really enjoyed the event, so thank you for the invitation. I have a terrible cold, which has got worse the whole time I've been here. So I'm sorry for the puffy eyes, the red nose, and the very deep voice. I have so enjoyed this conference, and I would echo what Anna said. The team in CIHEAM are fantastic, as are the team in Bari in Italy, and it's been a real pleasure to have them involved in the project. What's really noticeable, hearing people talk about the situation in Egypt, in Morocco, in Tunisia, is how many of the same similar questions we're actually looking at in grass sealing. So let me just very briefly give you an overview of grass sealing. So it's a 3-year Horizon Europe project with a budget of €3 million. If I can just say, it was in a social call of projects from the European Commission. So there was one on farm safety, various social aspects of agriculture. All of the other projects got a budget of €5 million, and the gender projects got a budget of €3 million to do exactly the same amount of work. So when we talk about unconscious bias in policies, there's a clear example for the European Commission. We have 9 partnered countries, north, south, east, west, long established new member states. So we have Lithuania, Croatia, Ireland, Denmark, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, Finland, and Sweden. I think I've got everyone there. There are a team of researchers in each country working on grass sealing, but there are also our stakeholder organization who coordinate the Living Lab with the leads. And then we have our 8 women innovators who are participating in the Living Labs. The European Commission love our Living Labs. Lots of projects have them. They're often ill-defined. They're not clear. It's kind of the buzzword you have to include. I did a lot of work when I was writing the project to understand what I meant by a living lab, because otherwise I couldn't write it. We pay our stakeholder organization. They get a good amount of budget, and we pay the women innovators a daily rate for participating in the lab. So I think this helps it to be true participatory action research. We are learning from the women. We're learning with them. We're learning about their needs and also their skills and abilities. We're doing other things too. So some of the things I've heard is about the lack of data about women and their role in agriculture or rural enterprises. We have the same problem. We still have very poor data at a European level on women in partnerships and so on farms, or what women's rural entrepreneurial activities are. So we did this in the 9 different contexts. We also looked more generally at national gender policies and how they impact on women and rural areas. And I'll say something about childcare in a minute. We benchmarked documents. We benchmarked European and national documents against the European gender equality strategy to see how effectively they had addressed gender. And in most cases, they had sidelined it and not incorporated it. Patricia outlined the Living Lab method very well. It's happened differently in different countries, and I find that quite interesting. I am following both the Irish and the Scottish Living Labs because they're both in English, and they're quite different. The participants in the Irish Living Lab are quite well established. They're the academic lead kind of identified the women, so they're kind of the exceptional women. You know, the women innovators who, when you turn on your television, there she is, or you open the newspaper and there she is. Whereas in Scotland, they advertised, and in Scotland, it's in the Highlands and Islands, so it's very remote. And their innovators are very young, really quite insecure. Interestingly, even in Ireland, where their businesses are very well established, they also talked about lack of confidence and insecurity. I think if I was doing the Living Labs again, I think they would be less prescriptive. And I think we would start by asking women what they wanted, and just having more involvement in that. Sometimes writing Horizon Europe projects doesn't allow for that, but there we are. And then we have a high-level policy forum that has a lot of high-level European stakeholders involved, including DG Agri. I wrote a report, I think I mentioned, for the European Court of Auditors, where they found that DG Agri had absolutely not introduced gender mainstreaming. So they got a pretty hard time about that. So I think they really are trying to take gender a little bit more seriously. But the thing that really struck me in hearing the experiences from everywhere else is how I think we could do a really good grass sealing type project, looking at experiences north and south, or having some kind of comparative element there. And I think CIHEAM Zaragoza and CIHEAM Barry are in a really good place to try to broker and establish that kind of comparative analysis, which I think would be really important for us both. Because of course, in the global north, excuse me, we've had much greater advances in gender equality. Societies are less traditional, less patriarchal. We've had, you know, a much greater participation in the labor force. And yet there is a gender pay gap, and there is still that expectation around childcare and elder care and so on. I mean, it's one of the things we've looked at in grass sealing. In Ireland, for example, you get 16 weeks maternity leave, you get 2 weeks paternity leave. So that's a very classic example of how societal expectations are there, and they're reflected in policies. So despite despite looking like apples and oranges initially, I think there is a lot of really useful comparative analysis we could do, especially when it comes to agriculture and rural areas. We see similar patterns of women not inheriting land, of patrilineal lines of inheritance. We also see that, I mean, you know, you talk about customary law, we talk about gender norms. But having looked at the different legal frameworks across Europe that govern land transfer, and especially Norway, where the eldest child is the legal heir to the farm, which the Norwegian government introduced in 1974 to try to break that difference in land ownership, it has not had a huge impact. It has not had any real significant impact. So we can see that cultural norms are actually much more important there. And in the last session, we heard about social enterprises. We find that too, especially in the labs in remote and rural areas. So for example, in Scotland, which is up in the Highlands, and a lot of the women come from the islands, there is no childcare. There are no community cafes. There often are no libraries, no facilities for older people. And women are coming and organizing this on a voluntary basis. And I have really wondered, given that the private sector won't provide this kind of infrastructure, and if we want our rural areas to be living, and even for government, it's, you know, it's an expensive model, whether there's some way in which these types of social enterprises could be remunerated for what they contribute to the community. So I just want to say a little bit now about future directions of research. And this is something I've been thinking about quite a lot. And I want to say something about how I think we need to be looking more at 3 different levels. So we need to look at the micro analysis, the micro level, and I'll explain these more as I go along, the meso or the middle level. And then we need to look at the macro or the grand scale level. And we need to integrate these because each one has an effect on the other. And I think we have to do that to move this agenda forward, because sometimes I feel like we're still asking the same questions we were asking 35 years ago. So how do we move it forward? How do we really genuinely advance equality for women? So when the grass ceiling call tender came out, I was really cross because the way it was written to me felt very retroactive. So it asked us to provide training for women, to help women develop innovations, to have living labs for women, to train them, to empower them, to support women. So it was all of this language, and it was only with women. And it very much suggested this diminished capacity. If only we could socialize women to have the skills to know how to do this, then gender equality would be solved. So it's almost that gender is something that women have, and we need to work with them to get over it. And this is what I call a very micro level analysis, where the focus is on women, on what women don't have, and it's on women only. And that kind of approach takes no cognizance of societal expectations, who's expected to do the grocery shopping, who's expected to look after elderly relatives. And it also takes no account of the fact that it's very difficult for women to access microfinance. It's very difficult for women to access land. And women are very underrepresented in farming organizations. So just constantly having this focus on women and not looking at what's going on at all the other levels of society, to me, if we just keep focusing on that, we're going to be here again in 30 years. Well, I probably won't be, but some of you will be. And this is a question I have asked myself a lot, and it's one I think we need to think about. I think it may apply more to the north, but again, I'm not so sure. So, and I guess this came back to the living lab. So if I had not had to write the tender the way grass ceiling or the way the call was written, I would have had living labs with women, I would have had living labs with men, and I would have had living labs with men and women. And it's just one of my concerns. And I see it in grass ceiling, and I've been asking this for a long time. The women really enjoy networking and being with other women and being in this comfortable space. We know that women often are more likely to access education through women-only initiatives. And I worry that it also suggests, and we have women farming organizations, that it's kind of a women's group thing. It's something that women have organized for women. It's over on the fringes, and the mainstream continues, taking no cognizance of this, and without women's groups or organizations being able to influence the mainstream. So, for example, you can look at the Irish Common Agricultural National Plan. And as I've said, I think the European Union has washed its hands of its responsibility to advance gender equality in agriculture in rural areas by just kicking it back to the member states. It's not compulsory and so on. Now, the Irish have introduced a preferential rate for women to access for farm modernization funds, so to improve the quality of your farm. To access this, you must be the herd owner. You must kind of be the registered owner. So that's of no use to most women on farms where 11% of women own farms. Many women work on their farms as in a career way, but do not own the land. Meanwhile, so they have this over there. And then they have a generational renewal kind of scheme that's part of the CAP National Plan. And that's completely gender blind. That doesn't have any quotas for women because the stuff about women is for women and it's over there. So generational renewal or bringing in new young farmers, which is a critical way to change an occupation. And we see a lot of emphasis on that in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subject. That's just not considered. So that's my concern about a women-only focus. It's on the fringe, and the mainstream stuff just continues. Okay, so that's kind of the micro level, I think, where it just tends to really focus on women. And if we have to think about women in a policy way, we'll do something specific for women because it's how they're socialized, and we have to kind of fix that. But of course, socialization doesn't only happen at the individual level. It also happens at a group level, at the meso level. Excuse me. So I did a big piece of research for the Scottish government back in 2016. And they, in the call, asked for me to interview women and to do focus groups with women and so on. So when I actually wrote the tender, I said I'd also like to interview and do focus groups with men. And this was just, I learned so much and it was really powerful. So a lot of women will tell me they don't want to participate in farming organizations because they don't feel they're taken seriously. They don't feel welcome. We had a number of articles in the UK and the Irish press recently about how women are asked to leave meetings at a certain point, or they have dinners for buyers and only men are invited. So there's a big problem about participation in farming organizations. So when I interviewed the men focus groups in Scotland, I asked about this, and I always find it incredible when you're doing a qualitative interview, people have signed a consent form and you have a tape recorder on what they actually say. So they were talking about it and they said, well, people wouldn't probably vote for them. You know, their face doesn't really fit. And then there was this whole dialogue between themselves about how, yeah, I know people who would think that, and they're not bad people. It's just, it's not what they expect. And then the conversation moved to women wouldn't want to get involved anyway, and they're leading from the kitchen. And then there was a whole conversation about how if women did come in, they'd have to get used to the rough and raucous way that people interact, and that you can't run a farm on a politically correct basis. So for me, it was really clear how men are justifying to each other that women don't belong in a farming group. And it also showed me that they expect to be visible. They expect to be in control. So we need to start looking at this. We need to start analyzing that if we ever want to make progress, because that socialization of men, the fact that they do not see women belonging, is not something you can fix purely by focusing on women. We have to look at that. And you know, one of the things we're trying to do in grass sealing is we're running what we're calling a paternity award, or an award for a farming organization that is encouraging men to take parental leave. So I just want to say something then about the macro level. So, and that's kind of at the societal or European Union level. So when I when that report I did for the Scottish Government was launched, Nicola Sturgeon, who was the Prime Minister, launched it. And when she became Prime Minister, she came into government with a gender equal cabinet. And every committee task force she set up had a male and female co-lead and an equal number of men and women. So she set up, 2 minutes, she set up a task force to look at implementing the recommendations, and it was gender equal. And that was very powerful because we often fielded men to answer questions. And it kind of showed it was both a women and a men's issue. At that macro level, if you look at Sweden, where you have parental leave and each parent must take a minimum, it is the only European country where having children does not impact on a woman's career. And finally, just to say at the macro level, you know, and again, I was interested that our colleague from the European Commission talked about the need to simplify European policies, which made it harder to look at gender. This to me is kind of, it's a cop-out. I've heard it about farm safety too. If we're very committed to achieving goals, then there needs to be a macro political will to do so. And each of these levels interact. The micro, the meso, and the macro all have an impact on each other. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Salim. You have the floor, dear General Secretary.
Can I? So, you know, these kind of meetings are like the parties. You know, when you go to a party and you have to leave, you get up, you stay by the door, and you start talking and discussing the things that you did not discuss and talk during the party. So, because there are so many suggestions, comments, indication that you would start again, but we are all tired, and that will be very short. So, at the end of these 2 days of discussions, I really want to express my sincere thanks to all the participants of the symposium, organized under the aegis of CIHEAM Zaragoza in partnership with the colleagues of the Union for the Mediterranean and with the support of the Spanish Agency for International Cooperation and the CIHEAM. And of course, the warmest thanks, I want to join Raul to warm really very much for a warm thank to all the colleagues of CIHEAM. I will not distinguish CIHEAM colleagues who made this memorable event possible today and yesterday. One main point I want to make just to start is the fact that one of the terms of the title of the symposium is innovation. And has been really interesting to see some of the innovative solutions that have been proposed and reported by the colleagues that have been speaking in the 2 days. One example was, I think, the Egyptian colleague mentioning the small wheat balls with the milk that can, you know, last for a year. And this is food technology. It's innovation in food technology, but it's completely linked to what has been done in the past. So, I mean, innovation is really something that is bottom up. It doesn't need always big infrastructure. It doesn't need, you know, complex situation and tools, but is a bottom up action activity that Patricia, for example, opened up a window, you know, talking about the living labs and the innovation aspect, the open innovation approach, which is mainly based on creative thinking. And this is the role of, I think, institution like us, which has a very strong portion of education, research, cooperation to include and to have moments like these and stimulating creative thinking. And this is one of the reasons when I will mention, when I will talk about the educational programs, the educational plan of CIHEAM. A few comments I will make about the panels and the discussion that we have participated in during the 2 last days, but also the reports, mainly from the reports of the rapporteurs of the various sessions, of course. I'm not very expert and familiar with all this topic, but I understand, I follow, I like, I enjoy hearing and discussing about that. I really hope that all the collection of the reports will be somehow published by you know, as a real conference report. So the rich and diverse intervention we have heard have highlighted the reality as complex and as complex as encouraging at the same time. Women are at the heart of the Mediterranean agriculture and food systems and our food security. Yet they are marginalized, we heard, from public policies, economic circuits, and innovation dynamics. They are not invisible. They are made invisible by a system that must change, and I believe we are all engaged to change it. The symposium allows to identify several structuring orientations that CIHEAM intends to adopt and pursue convincingly in the coming years, in coherence, in agreement with our strategic plan 2030. First, it is about advancing scientific diplomacy in the service of the women empowerment and strengthening the role at all levels by strengthening the bridges between research, public policies, field practices. We will contribute to innovation ecosystem that integrate a gender perspective. We need to invest in more flexible, concrete, and territorially connected educational pathways and vocational training, micro-certification, knowledge incubators, and partnership with the universities that enable the talents and the skills of rural women and young female graduates to be revealed and deployed. The role and the position of CIHEAM is to scale up the ideas, the innovations, and the several thoughts generated by this community in practical actions on the field through our educational research and innovation and cooperation programs. I would like to spend a word about the CIHEAM educational model, dear friend, Professor Raúl Compés. Our approach recently is really going to make the exercise to change the classical educational paradigm. So it's transfer of information, transfer of knowledge, towards an innovative, again, approach. So all the stakeholders participating in co-planning and co-deciding the course programs. We have a large space of the program to project work to be performed into the field, into the class, into the laboratories, into the company system. The involvement of the private business, encouraging individual or team entrepreneurship. And Yasmin was mentioning today about the Innovation Award of CIHEAM, which has been done this year for the first time together with UFM, Unimed, BusinessMed, a number of other organizations to enlarge also the platform to have more people involved. And again, many of the participants were, most of them were young women, a group of women, and it's been really a pleasure to see all this creativity coming up in our action. So we should help to bridge the gap between the acquired skilled and the real opportunities. We must better articulate our support mechanism with labor market developments while also working on leadership and negotiation. The CIHEAM Innovation Award did not only produce a winner, but we also, together with the first award, we awarded two other persons, because we offered a master course for 1 year, and we also offer full board, and also we offer a training period in an enterprise. So with a strong connection with the stakeholder, which was following our program. Practical engagement. We will operate from tomorrow together with our institutes and colleagues through the exercise of setting up additional modules in some or all of our master program. We have more than 20 master programs at CIHEAM, and we can really offer individual single module of this topic, of these ideas and items to be inserted transversally in all the master programs, independently on the objective, the target of the program, but also in conjunction with some of the ideas that we drive there. We also wish to better support our Mediterranean female students so they can deploy the full professional potential, particularly with regard to the challenges of work-life balance. Young women need inspiring and supportive female role models to project themselves, and I'm convinced that the CIHEAM alumni network can serve this cause. So we will, make the exercise to involve the platform with thousands and thousands of contacts that we have in this action. As an actor in dialogue and cooperation in Mediterranean, we must also contribute to accelerate the integration of gender into agriculture and rural development policies, notably by supporting existing guidelines on gender equality, promoting transformative approaches, and supporting women in local and sectorial governance. To this end, we need to strengthen multilateral interinstitutional alliances, as we are doing. The successes of FAO, OECD, European Union, UFM, and our national partners in promoting women-led innovation and entrepreneurship in Mediterranean agri-food system show that this is the time to better coordinate programs and move beyond the project-based logic to embed our action in a long-term vision. So today we are launching a call for a collective action. May the Mediterranean become a living laboratory of collective intelligence with a novel rule of feminism, nurtured by cooperation, by the listening of the territories, and impacting on agriculture and food policies. Of course, we respond positively, and we are ready for the call celebrating the International Year of Rural Women next year, 2026, which will be an opportunity to highlight the prominent place of rural women in global agri-food systems and to commit to addressing the problem they face. CIHEAM reaffirms its commitment to support women so that they can participate unhindered in the green, blue, and digital transitions in Mediterranean agriculture and food system, making it a central pillar of its strategic priorities. Thank you very much.